Mm.
Because he would be great. Got to do it either like on a Saturday or you'll get him.
I'm sure we'll have like this conversation several times over here in the coming month, because I think it ties heavily into suicide awareness and the
Yeah.
conversation around suicide, passive suicidal tendencies and stuff in people. So, hi, you guys. Welcome to Life Discussions with Dr. Jefferson. I am back with my official co host, Susanna Stone. Look, we're kind of like dressed alike, and we didn't even. That's just crazy. Look at the stars in the universe. After the new moon, manifestation moon comes, we're all in alignment with one another.
Uh-huh.
Tonight, our show is going to focus on the very delicate topic of the opiate crisis, but not only the opiate crisis, we're going to talk about the crisis on substance use in general, and the underlying issues, because I think that the Breakfast Club tried to address it, but I think they still fell short of the mile marker in addressing what the real issue is. And I'm going to play a clip for you guys. We're going to listen to it and we're going to react. We're going to respond. And we're going to give you guys some clinical conceptualization of what is happening to you if you're a person who indulges in substance use on a regular basis, because we know that culture has normalized it insurmountably over the past decade and decades. You know, essentially since the 60s, it's been heavy out here. And it's been kind of like a really heavy thing here since the 60s. But we know, like, even 1100 after the death of Christ, the opiates was a huge thing with opium in New England, like in Europe, in European countries, Germany and stuff like that. So, I mean, it's not like heroin and cocaine are things that are brand new on the scene. We don't have anything that's new under the sun. We're just discovering newer ways to capitalize off of the things that have already, introduced themselves and stepped onto the scene. So, we're going to go ahead and play the intro for you guys, because that's where our disclaimers are, because I want to make sure that everybody is very clear on the fact that we do intend to use the video clip that you guys are going to view today as a means to not only draw awareness and have this conversation, but to talk about some of the accountability factors around some of the people that are mentioned and some of the responses that we see in the people who have their parts to play. And we're going to talk about the way these different generations react and respond to one another when help is rendered out there, right? When we do reach out and we do try to kind of render a helping hand, and how we're rejected and that kind of stuff. So let me jump into this blues intro and I'll be right back in about 3 minutes, you guys. See you soon. So, hello, you guys. Welcome back. And as I said earlier, welcome to Life Discussions with Dr. Jefferson. This is an accountability channel in which we have the very difficult conversations around accountability when it comes to issues that have a direct or indirect impact on the Black, Brown, and melanated cultures of America. I'm going to let my co-host Susanna make her introduction and talk a little bit about her background and some of her specialty areas before we jump into the conversation tonight. Tonight's conversation, the focus of the conversation will be able to bridge the gap of understanding when it comes to clinical conceptualization of what's going on with people who struggle with substance use and issues related to substance use and people who are on the street that are friends with them or people who are using right in your everyday life and not seeing the clinical side of things but seeing the more personal side of things, and we're going to bridge the gap of understanding for you guys tonight. So go ahead, Susanna.
Well, hello, good night. Thank you for having me on, Dr. J. I'm Susanna Stone. I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I have a private practice. I'm recovery and consulting through a different lens. I see my aim is to see couples and individuals and provide clinical supervision for individuals who are in the process of becoming a therapist, like social workers and licensed marriage and family counselors and stuff like that. This topic is interesting to me in a lot of ways. And part of that is I've spent 30 some years doing addiction work in addiction meanings with substance issues, and I also do trauma work. So I know there's some when somebody have a problems with substance use. Usually, part of what happens if you want to get clean and sober is you end up having to take a look at your trauma. So that's the other piece of what I do, helping people understand that. And I understand it through personal experiences. So that's where I am at today with that stuff.
So I'm going to start the conversation off, before I start playing the video feed for you guys. I'm going to start the conversation off by saying we all at some point in our lives are going to go through very distressful moments, like heavy stress moments where we feel helpless, hopeless. We just feel like we've hit rock bottom and life gets hard because life is not meant to be easy. It's meant to be fair. And sometimes the lessons that life teaches us, and to be honest with you, sometimes not even just the lessons, sometimes the methodology in which life teaches us some lessons, sometimes those methods can be so difficult for us to just bear, to just kind of navigate, go through, and to weather the storm, if you will, that we lose sight, we lose our focus, and we lose the ground beneath us, and we just crumble. We crumble under the circumstances of the difficulties of life. And as a result, we may stumble upon substance use. Some people cope in other ways. Some people have a tremendous the area of addiction is such a broad spectrum, right? So you can have a shopping addiction, porn addiction, video game addiction,
Eating.
phone addiction, right? Eating disorders that are addictive behavior, whether it's binge eating or not eating at all, right? Diets, over excessive exercise, excessive, what do they call it? Uh, Fasting, right? Spiritualism and religious component. So we can be addicted to anything, and we can become obsessed in our lives over and towards a number of things. And I think that these are the conversations that people generally do not come to the table for, simply because these are the conversations that are extremely, extremely uncomfortable. But I do feel like these are the conversations that answer so many of the lingering questions that we have about the way people behave and how situations can just escalate And you know what I mean? In situations where we just cannot fathom, somebody just killing everybody they know, killing somebody, or shooting somebody and killing them over stepping over their sneakers, you know what I mean, or um, looking at their girlfriend wrong. You know, I think the answer to those questions are, what are they taking, right? What are they giving to themselves? What are they allowing to penetrate through their energy centers?
Mhm.
So, my question to you guys, of course, is going to be the very candid. Hopefully, you guys give me a very candid answer. Do you know someone who has struggled with addictive disease, or do you know someone who uses substances on a regular basis, regardless of what that said substance is? Um, and I just want you to keep that in mind while we're watching this content. Anything you want to say before we get into the video, Susanna?
No, no. I think you said pretty much. And I mean, the only thing is if people feel they're at the stage where they can say I do or I did, that's okay too. People do recover. Yeah, we know that.
And even recovery doesn't have to be a permanent thing, right? So recovery is a process in and of itself.
Hmm.
Healing is a process in and of itself. And oftentimes I think people get the misstep and the misconceptualization that when a person is recovered per se, they no longer use substances, they no longer walk the way they used to walk, they no longer see the people they used to see, they don't hang around the people they used to hang around, and things like that. And now I'm not going to say that that's not advised, because oftentimes it's definitely advised. We want you to be able to maintain your sobriety, um and it's easy for you to be triggered when you're constantly around those same people that are doing those things that you're trying not to do, right? But I think it's all about self-regulation and monitoring ourselves accordingly, but holding ourselves accountable equally also for the things that we commit ourselves to. So let's.
Post from Lunel. She said, have a drink, smoke a self rolled or dispensary rolled joint. Leave the effing scissor, Molly, and cocaine alone. You might be next, and all you were trying to do was party. This ish is no joke at all. The dope dealers are killing people, but hey, you don't have to listen to me. R.I.P. She said, please, y'all, come on, let's not keep playing Russian roulette with your life. It's not worth it. I know your kids don't want to listen to me, but do it for your mother, your kids, your family, yourself, praying for us all. This is not a game. Well, Jocelyn, for some reason, did not like this post, and she said, tell this fat hoe to stop eating. That also can kill you. She a burger away from a heart attack, and you talking about someone just died for whichever reason that she's not even sure about.
Damn.
Effing pig. Put the plate down. Pig, pig, pig.
Why do people get mad when you simply tell them?
So I'm also gonna go with that one. I'm gonna ask that question, and it's not even about the why do people get mad, but
What gets triggered for them?
right, why is it so difficult for you to hold back the fact that you were triggered by somebody pointing out your truth before you were ready for your truth to be revealed to the
Mhm.
world? And another thing is, how do you not know that this is confirmation for the rest of the world? Now we know for sure. If nobody ever knew, that you were using substances, now we know for sure. For sure.
To not do drugs?
And then Luna responded to my physical brothers, don't read this morning after 4 back-to-back deaths and one person critically ill in the hospital within a very short time. I felt compelled to plead with my people to subside in recreational deadly drug use of Molly, scissor, and cocaine, etc. Well, someone got obviously triggered and they are mad. This is what I received from Miss Hernandez. I am over here packing for the next movie I'm about to start filming and excited about my comedy show this weekend at the Stress Factory and the World War III comedy tour I'm on.
I like the fact that she was promoting herself, you know. At the same time as responding to all of this hatred,
Well, that's in the continuum of the using, right? The using disguises your feelings. So here is, we don't need to be talking about you talking about me using. So let's disguise that too. So that's the pattern. She's going to do that in every areas of her life. The disguise. That's going to happen.
So the interesting thing to me is that Lunel is a past heavy drug user.
Mm.
Like, and she's very open about the fact that, you know, she used drugs during the crack pandemic. I mean, you know, crack pandemic it was in the Black community back in the day. Lived through, did it, got the black t-shirt, white t-shirt, yellow t-shirt, every t-shirt that was passed around, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And she is also very clear about its impact on her life, on her relationships in her life, on her successes, on her failures in her life. There are so many levels, and there is something to be respected about the fact that she is so transparent, right? And that she is willing to share so much of herself with the world. I think that we have to be people who are more than honest with ourselves when we say, this is an issue for our community. This is a real issue. And one of the things that I feel like Black people have got to start asking themselves is this: why is it that we don't talk about things that are an issue in our community until they start to kill celebrities? Like, what about our realities? Even if it's happening every day in our neighborhoods, what about our reality? It's so skewed,
Mm.
right? It's so scary that we reject it until it's on the TV screen and the news is talking about Black people that are in power, in positions on TV, people who are in media, the folks that got the limelight all on them. Until those people are noticeably dying, we're not having the conversation. But these are things that are happening and have been happening for decades.
Mm-hmm.
For us,
Generation.
you know, it's been impacting us as Black and brown people, as people in general, forever, historically. So let me see if I can make move this out of the way for a second. We don't talk about anything important unless celebrities talk about it. I agree. You know, Shannon, like, you hit the nail on the head then.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the thing. It doesn't become a pressing issue. It doesn't become a pressing issue until it's so far gone. The impact is so permeable. Like, it's permeated our entire community. We've got to lose hundreds and thousands and hundreds of thousands of lives in order for us to say that it really is an issue in our community. That is beyond me. I don't understand. But we gravitate every single day to, like, the gossip column. Every day. Like, here on YouTube, people in the aftermath, in the immediate aftermath of all of this stuff, I was breaking this story in the immediate aftermath, this story and all of this. I was having these conversations, okay? Meanwhile, you got tons of content creators talking about Tasha K and the lead therapist having beef with each other. I'm like, what are we doing? People are dead. People were found dead this weekend. People were found dead. Another person was found, and they're Black people. Okay, I can understand if they were just any people. You know what I mean? We're not talking about Mac Miller. We're talking, and Mac Miller was, even though he was a white guy, he was considered to be the blackest white guy since Eminem. So, but we're not talking about him. These are people that you guys are listening to.
Mm-hmm. Emulating. Mm-hmm.
Right. Every single day in your life, supporting with your dollar, with your Black dollar. And you don't care. You're not talking about that until it's on. You got to wait on into the week and have those conversations. You'll click on and click right off. Right. So it's not really an issue. And you're still doing the same things. You're still doing, you're engulfed in the same behaviors. That's what I don't understand about us. Like, I really don't. So says it's like, oh, Taraji started talking about mental health. Now it's important. It's been important. Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. Way before she started talking about it. We have how many clinicians, how many of us have been over here having these conversations for years before Taraji decided to make it an issue for her. And people are not having these conversations or just simply refuse to pay attention to the conversation. You know, mental health struggles, brain health struggles, those things are not real. It's like the boogeyman to the Black community.
Well, it's also about, like, if you think about it, right? How, you know, the Black culture is. We don't put our business out there. Right? You're told that from later. You don't put your business out there. So if you've got people in your family who is having substance issues, you're not going to go out there and talk about it. And then the Black actresses who making it big out there is a representation of us doing well, right? Until that story hits the paper, or him or her overdosing, or him or her ending up in a mental institution, then there's a crack in our system, right? So what we do is what we know. We don't talk about it because there's been some deaths in the past couple of days, within the week, and the conversation around is not about the use. It's about what he has been like as an actor. And I'm talking
Right.
about, you know, what that person has been like as an actor.
Yeah, talking about
what
Michael K.
happened.
Williams. Yeah, it's not. And here's the thing: I saw a couple of outlets that broke the story about the transition, how we got here. You got a couple of people digging a little bit deeper, trying to figure out, okay, how long has he been passively suicidal? Finally, somebody found out that that was his way. He knew he was killing himself. He committed suicide. This was full on suicide. He left, his last post was the post that, I don't know how many of you remember when Tracy Morgan was involved in that near fatal accident that killed his best friend, right? Do any of you remember that? That's the biggest mistake, believe taught. What goes on in this house stays in this house. Worst thing we could have taught one another. Oh my God. And we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about that. Michael. So Michael K. Williams, the actor, that's the one that was found last over the weekend. It was Fuquan Johnson and Kate Quigley found at a party with Enrico, what is his name, Collation. He was also a comedian. So those were the three comedians. And this is what's interesting, you guys. I want you to pay really close attention to this. This is what got Jocelyn, when they say a hit dog, a holler, okay? This is what got Jocelyn Hernandez all upset. She felt like this was targeted towards her. Because what do we know about substance use? People who use substances, even if it's marijuana, we're going to call a thing tonight. It causes paranoia. All substances across the board cause an altered mental state. And at some point, that paranoia is going to show up. It doesn't matter what type of drug you are using. When you're overusing and you become hypervigilant and you become suspicious, that's just a part of the process for you. Yeah. You don't see it, sir, ma'am, because you're in the dance. I love it when I have people come to me like, how you figure I'm high? My eyes. I know I put Visine in, Dr. J. I know that you're high because I'm not, and I'm never high. That's why. You know, people who are straight-laced, who are always by the book, that can see very clearly, we can tell. We can tell because we know what your regular baseline looks like, and we know what this looks like, and it's not that, right? So Jocelyn was disturbed by that, but you know, this young lady was putting out here. Lunel has been a substance user for a long time, okay, and stopped. She stopped for a reason, because I don't know how many of you are paying attention, but there are several celebrities who are dying from opiate-related overdoses, who are dying from substance use and overdoses from substance use culture. In general, look at Whitney Houston. Look at DMX. He was having a party too, partying and having his glory days, living out his best life.
Yeah.
And now
Prince, Michael Jackson.
Yeah.
I mean, how big could it get?
Exactly. How far does this thing have to go for us to wake up and say, you know what, this is an issue for us? Your uncle, your cousin, your grandfather, your cousin, right? The cousin baby mom,
Generation.
all of them. All of them. These people, you could be a person who has been impacted to that extent, and you're still out here smoking weed, sharing lace blunts. You understand what I'm saying? Sharing popping pills. Don't know what you're popping, but you're popping it because you feel safe. You've been knowing this dope dealer forever. Right? It kills me how you can trust a dope dealer before you will trust the person that brought you into this world.
Well, they ain't trust him, but they know he'll give them what they want. Because there's a song and dance between the dealer and the user.
But that's the thing. How can he give you what you want if you end up dying from what he's got?
Well, that's what you figure that out. If you overdose and you make it, then you realize he's not a dealer to deal with, and you might put his light out.
But that's the thing. Most people who overdose, they don't wake up. They wake up dead. They don't wake up now, in the here and now.
A lot of them make it.
Right.
Quite a few of them, have an overdose and make it. And then they know not to do with him anymore. They get somebody to take care of him, and then you move on. Or you become a dealer.
So let's see how Kate Quigley feels. Kate Quigley is waking up literally 30 minutes or so ago, 40 minutes now maybe. She woke up, you guys, and was able to make her first update. Her mother posted earlier, a few hours ago, about the fact that since she has been in, the aftermath of the overdose, because she was involved in the overdose that killed Fuquan Johnson. Okay. And Enrico. All of them were at that same party. Okay. And you got other people that were also a part of that party. It was about 5 of them there all together. Now, what is really interesting to me is that Kate is lucid. She's in and out of consciousness. She's not oriented to the here and now. Who knows how long it'll take before this woman recovers and get her mental faculties back. So I want you guys to think about that. Like, is that the quality of life that you want for yourself? Do you think that hospitals are not already under pressure with COVID patients? Like, I don't know. I don't know what it is that we need to do to convey the message of the urgency of dealing with the underlying issues of mental health issues, coping, dealing with your distress properly, navigating through the distress that you're going through, going to therapy, getting a journal, writing it down, getting it out, externalizing, hitting a pillow, yelling, screaming, whatever you need to do.
Because that's not how it works in society.
So why?
It's a fix it mentality. Fix whatever is going on real quick with whatever is in front of you, whatever. So in the Black community, what you have is substances, right? And you don't plan to be addicted because you don't ever think you would end up like Michael Jackson or Prince. No.
So why not?
Because you're already in this distorted thinking mentality in the first place to pick up that joint. There's something about when this person said, oh, we're smoking, and you decide, oh, I'll try it. You already stepped out of this may not be helpful. I could get addicted. No, I don't really want to do it. You don't even recognize it's peer pressure. But that part of your brain clicks in. Well, you remember, because your brain remembers, even if you don't, and your conscious remember that pain you had about something that happened. And you smoke the joint. And it feels fine. And then your brain says, well, this feels good. Try it again. And because you get into a community or where the drug use is a community and a culture, you try different things. So you don't even think about what are the issues that may have been bubbling up inside of you that's making you even think of wanting to use. Because it's really an unconsciousness. And all you want to do is feel better. It's really all we want to do. That's why I used to love chocolate. But I don't eat chocolate anymore. But I used to love chocolate.
Yeah, because chocolate does create an influx of dopamine and serotonin in your blood.
So does the drugs too. The drugs does initially create that.
Yeah, but see, at what point do we look around us, right? So we can look at, if we just went to Jocelyn's example, right? What if we only went into her example? Her example is that, you know, Lunel is a burger away from a heart attack. Okay. Clearly, clearly, she's well. The woman's making her own money. She sees her own team of physicians, and clearly she's well. So going under the knife, having several plastic surgeries doesn't make you healthier than the next person.
No, it
So
makes me beautiful, which is what I
on
want
the
to do.
outside, on the
Yeah,
outside, yeah.
that's
So
what I
you
want to be.
appear,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So you appear beautiful on the outside, while on the inside you're struggling very much to get a congruent sense of self in the mix, just
Mm-hmm.
to cope and just to live life,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So at what point does your reality start to permeate and the people around you that are in the trap house dying as a result of constant substance use, right?
The
Like
person who is
at what point do you see your reflection in those people that you're
yeah,
seeing?
but a couple things happen. You
Mhm,
usually tell yourself that's never going to be me
mhm,
because you can get as high as you want, try a new drug that you hadn't tried before, and wake up tomorrow. See that's not me, right?
mhm,
The sometimes people usually kind of understand that it's too much. They have to live differently when they've lost most things,
mhm.
or maybe when they've ended up in jail one too many times. But it takes something really, I mean, I don't know what the word is, but almost catastrophic to kind of give you a jolt into realizing I don't want to do this anymore. Because if you go into a meeting, like if you go into any meeting and somebody new in there, listen to how they talk. They are like, well, I'm not like that.
Mhm.
That's one of the things guaranteed. Well, I wasn't like that. That's not me. Because they don't recognize that's their mirror. They don't recognize it. They'll learn about it. They can't even tell you why they come in. They may come in. They may come in and tell you, "I want to get services," when they really want to kind of like they've been using too much, and they know they've been using too much, and they might have an OD, or they might have somebody next to them who OD, and they kind of like, "Oh, that's a little," I don't want to be like that. So let me go in and try to dry up for a couple of days and try it again. But your brain has already been distorted in how you perceive reality from the jump street, from the get go. So you never think that's going to be you. You never
Mhm.
ever do.
So what about when you do? For example, if we were to talk about Michael K. Williams, so a lot of folks haven't, like I talked about earlier, before I kind of got into this spiel, a lot of people don't understand how he got here. Michael K. Williams, his wake up call, his aha moment was DMX's death. I remember him posting and saying, like, this is me. This
Mm-hmm.
is me.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of folks don't realize he's like the guy who, just in case you guys are wondering who he is, he played on The Wire.
Yeah.
He's is it Odom?
Yeah, and yeah, he played himself really.
Yeah, on yeah, literally. And he wanted the world to finally see that this was his lifestyle and had been his lifestyle for so long. He came out, what was that, around May time frame when DMX died from his overdose. He talked about how difficult it was for him, kind of falling off the wagon and going back and forth on the I'm gonna be clean, I'm gonna be clean. But this right here was the aha moment for him.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he didn't want to be remembered for this, right? This type of event as he saw DMX.
Mm-hmm.
Literally, he talked to the fact that he needed to feel. He needed to feel love. If you guys go back and you track and you look at his posts and stuff, this man has been talking about the need to feel love, to need to feel desired, wanted, appreciated,
Mm-hmm.
all of this time. These are things that he's been talking about for the past couple of months. Nobody has been listening. When I tell you guys, when I did that episode a couple of days ago on suicide awareness and the drug
Mm-hmm.
crisis and things like that, I need you guys to pull up a chair and really pay attention. This is a real issue for us. This is a real crisis for us. We are in a very seriously volatile state of emotional being right now.
Mm-hmm.
I know that a lot of folks don't want to give credit to the pandemic and all of that because so many of us are still out here with loose wires saying, okay, it's not a real thing, you know, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Keep that mindset. Keep that energy because I'm not gonna lie. To a certain point, that energy is probably what's keeping you safe right now. The more in
Mm-hmm.
fear you are, the more volatile your immune system is. But, but I need you guys to understand you do need to properly process the way that these transitions and abrupt changes in the world around you are affecting you. These things are going to cause a ripple effect. You're going to be anxious. That's normal. You're going to be volatile. That's normal. But what we don't need to normalize is substance use. You have clinicians out here that are vying for substance use. Like sometimes I'm baffled by what I see on this internet.
Mm-hmm.
I really am. And I just think that, I just try and send positive vibes their way. And I just keep it moving because I'm a person who is a firm believer that you believe in what you believe in, push for what you
Mm-hmm.
push for. I hope it works out for you because I follow the science. And as a scientist practitioner, I see what the use of those particular substances, you guys talk about cannabis is not dangerous for you. There is a ton of science
Mm-hmm.
that says something totally different.
Today I was talking to someone who's in long term recovery, and I was asking the question because we were talking about the fentanyl and the heroin, right? And I was like, oh, I didn't realize that fentanyl go way back, even
Mhm.
before Vietnam. So
Yep.
he was educating me. Yes, it does, and I'm like, well, don't you know, like when. Don't you know? Don't you see what happens around you? People are dying, people didn't make it, how people are looking, and he said to me, addicts are very smart. Yes, we're well aware that the world looks like that these things happen. B, biology takes over because what that is this natural physiological dependency. And C, there's nothing else that has replaced the need to want something else beside the substance. There's nothing that has come. And that's what happens. That's what we've seen in the Black community. There is no one talking about it's okay to say I feel depressed. It's okay to say I feel sad. It's even okay to say I feel suicidal. What does that look like different for different people? But it's not okay. There's nobody in the community where you have permission to say that. So
Right.
what do? You cover it up with the best friend that you can find, which is marijuana, crack, cocaine, or alcohol, you just name it. Because that becomes something that talks to you about life is okay. Because there
So,
is no community that's going to tell you that.
so at what point do you think we get to a place where we're just calling a thing and we're just going to say, hey, this just really is not working for us. Like this is really not working for us. Every time I find that I'm sober,
Mm-hmm.
I'm still in the same state of crisis as I was before I started taking the substance.
Mm-hmm.
What can I do something that would yield different results? Like, I guess for me, because I live my life, I'm extremely pragmatic. Um and that's what it's about. It's about what makes sense at the end. I'm about outcomes. So how can I see what these outcomes are because I'm
Mm-hmm.
living these outcomes every day.
Mm-hmm.
But how can I stamp in viable outcomes right here in this moment that say
Mm-hmm.
that this is conducive to my overall gain in some way, shape, form, or fashion?
Well, you see, the regular folks, right?
Mhm.
You could process that stuff. You could like feel sad and be able to know, look, I got to call a friend and talk to her about it. It's different for that person who's using. They don't see it like that. The change that people go through to maintain recovery really involves some sort of spiritual healing. There is no way somebody who's using gets clean and sober and just get clean and sober. You've got to make the change to understand that and that's why it's important when you listen to Narcotics Anonymous, Alcohol Anonymous, any kind of anonymous, they talk about a power greater than you. Because you've got to learn to understand that something created you outside of your own sense of who you are and your own control and your mom and dad. There's something greater than you. Once and that's what Narcotics Anonymous and Alcohol Anonymous that they teaches you to understand that that power greater than you.
Do you
If you
think that that's one of the main issues now, that that's what's different about the substance use crisis now versus the substance use crisis in the 80s? Do you think that that's the main difference?
well, I think when I look at stuff, right? Like I remember in the 80s, it really was people got it. People understood that. When folks get clean and sober, they understood that.
Right.
What they never understood was what do you do with someone who's got significant mental health issues,
Hmm.
right? Because they were the ones who couldn't stay clean and sober for nothing because the voices were too much, the depression was too much, the mania was too much, the seeing things was too much. They didn't know how to deal with that. What's happening today is we finally having therapists who are like saying, okay, we'll treat the mental health and you go to A and NA and talk about how to stop using. And we combine both to help you, have a balanced life. That's but so folks now have to recognize that they have mental health issues because when you get clean and sober, that comes out. That's what comes out. You see the
So
mental
the
health.
emotional, I think that the mental health comes from the lack of being able to become emotionally congruent. So I do
Absolutely.
think I think it's all on a continuum. I think that we learn from, as a culture, I think there are factors once, if it's not in the family of origin, I think there are factors in the environmental exposures that people have once they kind of get introduced to life and
Mhm,
friends and,
mhm,
peers, whatever. I think that there are some components there that teach people to internalize versus externalize and problem solve, right?
mhm,
So if you're internalizing everything, at some point it becomes too much. And when it becomes too much, if everybody around you, if you see that the popular thing, the normal thing, because if you're going through it and it's becoming too much for you, everybody else has to be going through it. And obviously it's too much for them. So let me look and see how they're dealing with it. So obviously the way that they're dealing with it is to smoke this joint. So let me pick up this joint. It starts with this joint. What happens when that joint is no longer effective? Because we know that at that point, your brain has the most neuroplasticity because you're growing the most.
You try something
It's
else.
growing the most. So now it becomes heavily resistant to substances in general. You don't know that, but you think it's just cannabis. So now you decide to, get you an upper, step your game up. We're going to try and snort this powder. Okay. First, you decide, okay, we're going to ease into it. So let's see what happens when I lace my joint with the powder. Okay. Oh, that did well, but let me just go ahead and go for the gusto. Now I'm gonna snort me a line of coke. Okay. Now, you know what? This isn't enough. The coke's not strong. Go back to the dealer. So now they start lacing it with the fentanyl because that's how they increase the potency, but that's how they've increased the potency for years.
Mm-hmm,
What happens is they get real greedy for the people that want to keep coming back because they got
mm-hmm,
the real good stuff and they know that the good stuff is stuff that's laced stuff. So now they're increasing how much fentanyl they're adding, but they're not considering who their target audience may or may not be. As I mentioned already in my Monday night show, as prescribing physicians, we are looking at your BMI index in order for
mm-hmm,
us to prescribe medications for you. So even people that we know that we are trying to induce death, people on hospice, okay, the amount of fentanyl and these people that take these overdoses,
mm-hmm,
it supersedes the amounts that we're giving to people to allow them to transition into death.
mm-hmm.
I need people to understand this. So that says that the people who are creating these things for you, They're not creating these things for you with you in mind.
Well, the dealer is making money. But the thing about using, right, is
Mhm.
you get high. You like the feeling.
Mhm.
And the more substance you use, the more you have a tolerance. So what worked yesterday is not going to work today. So you're going to need more. And that person who is actively using is always rushing to get that high. What I had yesterday, I want it back today. And if I try something today and I don't get that high, I actually feel withdrawn. I actually feel angry, irritated, and want to hurt somebody, including myself. That's what we call withdrawals. So they got to do more. And every day you got to do more. And doing more mean you might have to add stuff to it because that's also feel better. And not everybody who's abused substance have used all substances. Some people have just stayed at, I like cocaine, I like heroin, I like marijuana, alcohol. Alcohol is still the biggest drug in the black community.
Mhm.
It's killing more people still than any other drug, believe it or not.
It
But some
is.
people, but this whole issue of I have to get more is about tolerance and needing more and more and more every day to maintain that high that I've always wanted. Because if you talk to somebody who's actively using, they'll tell you the best high they ever had was the first one, and
Yep.
they try to get that every day for the next 40 years or however long they've used, or when they die.
Right. But the thing is this, your tolerance does not mean that your body is able to tolerate.
Absolutely not, but that's not
And
the
that's what
mindset.
right. So I think that's what I think I need people to hear and understand. Like, because you're increasing, because you think that okay, this is no longer giving me this high. So
Mhm.
eventually, your body will reject the high. It will reject the outcome you're trying to achieve. However, it will still impact the your life expectancy in a tremendous way. You see what
Mhm.
I'm saying?
Mhm.
So that's what I really need for people to understand because I feel like that's the one thing that I feel like we're missing the mark on.
When people go into treatment, that's what they hear. But that's not
Having
something they're gonna
different
get.
life.
That's not something they're gonna pick up out there. It's not their culture. It's become the norm. So the norm doesn't involve you knowing all these extraneous information. It is how you're using. That's your norm, and that's what it is. That's what's comfortable to you.
But wait, he mentioned
Mhm.
us substance users are extremely smart. So wait, now listen to the rest of this. This is what really this conversation
Okay.
was interesting to me. We're going to listen to a little bit more now.
Okay.
Unbothered. My family and friends, however, are quite offended, and this is their response. Gonna go make me a smoothie. And then she put hashtag swipe, and she posted some of the responses to Jocelyn.
I mean, just say no. There is no right way to do the wrong thing. Like, I want to send all the people battling with drug addiction healing energy, and we need to get, those individuals the help they need. It's really just that simple. But I don't. What was wrong with Lunel's message?
I didn't see
I mean,
nothing
it's
wrong with it.
heartbreaking seeing people who are dying and getting these drugs from these drug dealers that are laced with fentanyl and other things
Absolutely.
that they don't know what's in it. So it is dangerous. And I'm sure that she has people close to her, like she said, who have just died. So she was expressing how she felt.
Yeah,
Now,
I don't.
question:
And so
what do
people,
we do at this point? Because people are using drugs, they don't know what they're taking, they don't know where they're getting it from. They're getting it from a local drug dealer. So what happens now?
I
Do
think we
we
got to get those.
legalize
No,
cocaine?
you got to get those people help for their addiction.
There's a
you
lot of
you get
people on cocaine, bro. There's a lot. Like you'd be
and
surprised.
America got a lot of money and resources to help
You're
those
right.
people. You know what I
There's
mean?
a lot of people on
Just
drugs,
like they
bro.
got a lot of money and resources to help white people that are addicted to opioids. Same exact thing. And you got to get those
right?
drug
That's why they're
dealers.
saying in
Oh, go ahead.
in other countries they're able to test drugs to see what's in it, so you know if you're what you're taking. But I mean, the truth to the matter is, it's been a campaign, just say no to drugs, that hasn't worked. You can tell people you can get them help, but it is a sickness. The addiction is a sickness. It's a disease.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think
and
you got
that's
to
the
start
root of the
scaring people
problem,
again.
right? The root of the problem is the addiction. You know what I mean?
Correct.
Instead of trying to find a right way for people to do the wrong thing, the root of the problem is the addiction. Let's help people with their addiction.
You got to scare the ish out of people. I remember as a kid when I used to see them commercials, it scared the ish out of me. I didn't want my brain on drugs, like honestly. So I never was nowhere near it. I don't really
Look,
see
there's
those
people who
commercials
are out
anymore.
of jail on parole that are failing drug tests. You know what I'm saying? That know they're going to end up going back to jail and still doing it. It's not an easy thing to just be like, say no.
That's why we
And
gotta
I'm
help.
scared.
That's why we gotta help those people heal. Like this country got more than enough resources where they could help people
And
heal.
you think about why people are doing drugs in the first place and what they're trying to escape.
That's
There's just a lot of different things.
It's all part of the healing process.
All right, now London on the Track. His child's mother, Ebony, is saying that she trashed Summer Walker because he promised that he would pay her. Now, she had some out of nowhere just started complimenting him on social media, even though previously she hadn't had the nicest things to say about him. And now she's on social media saying that all she said the other day was cap. She said, basically,
You can't hear me. So I'm curious, like, what do you think? What do you think about Charlemagne the God saying that the underlying issue is addiction versus mental health, emotional instability, things like that? What do you think that people on the outside that are non-clinicians, like, what do you think they're trying to say to us when we hear that?
Well, the underlying issue is not the addiction. We know that. The underlying issue is I don't like how my life was. I don't like when I was 2 or 3 years old that I've never met my mom, or I saw my dad beat my mom, or my uncle came into my room every night, or we never had enough, or we moved around too much, or kids taunted me in school, or I had my skin is too dark and I had really bad hair, and everybody else made fun of me. Those are the underlying issues. Those issues never got addressed. You know, I was in this summit today on preventing substance use, right? I'm just veering off the topic, but it makes sense. And one of the speakers was this guy who jumped off the bridge, the Golden Gate. He was one of the few persons who survived.
Oh, you guys had Kevin there?
Yes, and one of the things he said was when he was on the bridge, plenty people passed by, hi, how you doing? And nobody really needed to hear what he had to say, whether he was doing well or not. He said, nobody never asked, what are you doing here? Are you okay? What's going on with you? They just kept going. He said, nobody never noticed me.
Yep.
And if you talk to a kid who's acting out in school, he's going to tell you that nobody noticed him until he acted out. So he's always been alone. So all those kind of issues is when you talk to somebody who's getting themselves clean and sober, will tell you those are the things. Addiction is just a process. It's not a behavior. It's not a feeling. It's a process that people go through. That's the word. That's a medical term, really, for somebody who has lost control over their substances. That's really all that is. So it's not about it, and it's not about that. It's not about addiction.
Right. Or not even substance use, because people will find themselves addicted to many things. So obsessive compulsive disorder is it's a thing. So people who obsess over things have no control over the limit in which they focus, or they're directing their goals, right? Their activity toward a particular goal, and there is a reason for that. They become overly anxious, overly obsessed with these particular things in order to take their attention away from other things that may not be in order in their life, that they feel like they have zero control over. And sometimes they don't even know that this is what's happening. It's an innate trauma response. Inside of your unsubconscious, that's a response that it yields. So I think it's really important for us to understand that what I hear him saying is that lay people on the outside who are non-clinical, I hear them saying they don't see their issues that they're going through every single day. They don't see them, period. They don't recognize them. They don't exist. They're not a thing. All they see is the addiction. They don't know where it comes from. It just affects them.
That's true.
And another thing that was really interesting to me, that stood out for me after listening to this, was that we in the Black community, we have a very, very distasteful and very bad habit of making everything about black and white. We do. Everything has to be about race. So there are substance abuse programs for black people and for white people, like in an abundance. In an abundance. The same exact resources that white people have access to, black people have access to.
Well, except that that's different. A
Right.
lot of what you would see in those programs, a lot of them are not culturally appropriate. They're not culturally competent. Like I managed a Spanish program for years. And part of what the state started telling us was we needed to have everybody come in because even though it's a Spanish program, we need to have black and white people come in, and they couldn't tolerate it because it just wasn't catered for them. I manage a black program. I have white women come in. It wasn't catered for them. It wasn't culturally specific to them. They never
I
laughed. They
don't
never
think that,
sang.
but see, I don't think that. See, I'm one of the people who I don't believe in separating people and conditioning people to buy into division. Individuation is not based off of race. Race is a
Mhm.
non-factor. It's only something that exists for American people. It's only a classification system for American people. Now, that's not to say it hasn't spilled out into other
Mhm.
cultures where they recognize that Black Americans are a race of people, right? Or white Americans are a race of people. But what I mean to say is to think of a person as unique in their cultural descent based on their race alone is to me incompetent. So when we start separating programs for the purpose of catering to the mindset that because I'm black, my experience
Mhm.
is different,
Mhm.
my trauma experience is different, we're doing an injustice to those same population of people that we're trying to serve because we're the people that are playing into the delusions of dehumanizing people
But
because
they
that's what it
but
is.
they understand their trauma different. They really do. So
But see,
you
that's
have
the
to
thing.
use
So
their language for
individuals,
them.
yeah, but so that's what I was gonna say.
Mhm.
Individuals understand their trauma different. So we can't say that all white people identify with all white people's language.
No.
We can't say that all black people identify with all black people's language. I know plenty of black people that have zero hood language. So
Mhm.
when they talk about code switching, when clinicians talk about that,
Mhm.
and I've had patients come to me that are those same black people, and they're like, you know what? I really appreciate the fact that you really received me for who I am. And I'm like, what does that mean? And they talk about having gone to 20, 30 black therapists
Mhm.
who welcome them in with, hey, bro, hey, sis,
Mhm.
power, all this stuff. And the thing is, that's not who I am. That's not who you are until you let me know who you are. As
Mhm.
a therapist, I'm here to hold space for you so you don't see the who I am in that space because that's irrelevant to that space.
Mhm. Mhm.
It's all about you. So I think that when black clinicians make this whole culturally competent argument, I think that we are incompetent in delivering services oftentimes because we put that on. We're deconditioning ourselves to understand that human beings are different just in and of the fact that they're human. That's it. So just because your skin is dark does not mean that your experience is black,
Yeah.
because black in and of itself cannot
Mhm.
be an experience, because a lot of people are dark skinned, but
Mhm.
everybody doesn't have a dark skin experience because they don't know what it means for that other person that's dark skinned. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah. And
So
I totally agree with you because I think cultural competency also involves understanding that there are other people who experience their life sort of different, to have the same kind of experience, but experience different because they are taught differently, right? It's not just that cultural competence. I mean, I just learn about Black people because I'm Black. I learn about, people who are Latino, West Indian, Caucasian, European as well. But I learn how they live. That might be different from me. That's a cultural competence.
Yeah, but
Um,
people,
but
I think when I think of cultural competency, I think about understanding that people have to, must, it's a part of the process
mhm,
that we differentiate, and
yeah,
individuation is a part of that process for us. So being an individual means that you are not your culture, you are not your color, you are
mhm,
not your ethnicity, you are not your race, you are who you are in your
mhm,
experience. So although we understand that biopsychosocial factors may be a component in conditioning you in your experience, who you are now depends on how you went through those different developmental stages of your life.
mhm,
And those components have nothing to do with the color of your skin. More than likely, it has more to do with your socioeconomic status,
mhm,
has more to do with your societal positioning when it comes to
mhm,
acceptability and the politics of peer pressure. So these are things that shape and cultivate our individuality. And so I think that that's the component that many Black clinicians are missing, because we're not
mhm,
searching for the resolution with the client. We're too busy trying
mhm.
to identify
Okay.
with and show that we're Black enough. And because we're
Yeah.
Black enough, we're good enough. So we
Right.
can't get to the
Mhm,
gist of understanding how to help them navigate their issue, because we're too busy trying to be a part of the same said issue that brought them in the first place.
mhm,
So I feel like competency means, let me help you navigate the exploration of how you got here, so that this clear mind can help clear your mind, and we
mhm,
can reconstruct what that narrative looks like in order for you to go forth with a new and a renewed sense of freedom over your life.
mhm.
And so for me, what I see is more and more Black clinicians who are a part of the problem more so than the solution. And I feel like we've got to start having these difficult conversations in order to bridge that gap alone. Because being divisive, even modality wise, and saying, okay, this intervention doesn't work for Black people. No, say it doesn't work for you as a clinician
Okay.
on the
And,
people
and
that
and
you
you can
try.
certainly use any intervention
Right.
and tailor it to suit that person sitting in front of you based on how they present it and what
Yeah.
they're sharing.
Right.
Because it's, believe it or not, trauma is not about what happens out there. It's about what happens inside of you. It's that internalization of the
Yep.
behavior. That's why some people could, experience being funded, and it's not a big, it doesn't impede their ability to function and live life. Other people just get stuck at 5 because they
Right.
were funded. So, so the trauma is really about how they internalize those experiences they've had and
Right.
how,
And
how their
also how we
nervous
see,
system then responds. Yeah.
yeah.
Mm,
And what I'm saying is how we see the world around us. So if we
right.
see the world because we've been vicariously conditioned to believe that the world that we live in, the culture we live in, wasn't shaped for us,
Hmm.
wasn't built to accept us, then
And
when we
some of
see
that is
things,
true.
but at one point it was true,
Hmm.
right? But
Hmm.
that's no longer so, because guess what? Laws apply across the board, whether you're Black, brown, orange, green, grape, whatever.
And it's how man interprets it that becomes the issue.
Exactly. But so if you have, for me, what I see is Black people are in their own way, because when we say things like that, that's to say that we don't believe that we are the same human beings that are represented as United States citizens. Because if the law was not made for you, you wouldn't have been able to get a driver's license.
Hmm.
They wouldn't have issued you a birth certificate, because these are United States, these are citizenship documents. So if the world was not made for you, they would not have given you these documents to give you a place in said society that's no longer accepting of you. So it starts there. Our perceptions have got to stop being distorted by the conditions that were set before we were ever a part of the equation. So while our ancestors may have suffered these very detrimental things to their being, that is not our story. That is his story.
So you're describing how addiction looks for the person who is using. Because
Exactly.
you and me standing on the outside
Yep.
understands it very differently.
Yep.
Them in that process is their norm. So
Hmm.
there is no issue.
And what's accepted?
Yeah, it's the norm and it's accepted, and that's how it is.
Hmm.
Well, when somebody comes into recovery, you telling them they need to be something different, and
Well, for
that's
me as a
really hard for
clinician,
them to
I don't.
understand.
Yeah, for me as a clinician, because I am a systemic clinician, I don't believe in pointing a person in a particular direction. So I don't do 12-step programs or any of that stuff
Mm-hmm.
because okay, what's effective for people who are systemic in their interventions with substance abuse crises is the fact that we're very exploratory. So we
Mm-hmm.
invite people to continue to be who they are. We meet them literally where they are and we
Mm-hmm.
allow them to see themselves through a different lens finally. But they're the ones that's doing the exploration, not us.
That's always the process, even in any kind of addictive treatment. That's all. Believe it or not, if you're doing real addictive, and I say real, if you're really doing, um, strength-based addictive treatment, that person, you're allowing that person to be who she wants to be, so that they can be successful. You educate them about understanding what substances, how it affects the brain, and you allow them to make decisions. That's why you don't ever tell. That's why, addiction has moved from people got to be abstinent to harm reduction. Harm reduction really is about you make that decision on where you want to be on the continuum of using or not using. And I'm not telling you not to use anymore because that's not my decision. That's yours. You come to that conclusion, yes or no, based on the kind of work you're willing to do on yourself.
So when for you, for the people that are out there
Mm-hmm.
wondering what addictive disease work looks like with the clinician, for you inviting a person into that space, if you're asking them about their goals for therapy and you clearly recognize that they have a substance use issue and they have an addictive disease issue and they've been, doing this for a while and their appearance is disheveled and obviously they appear with an altered mental state and all of these things that substitute as a crisis situation, but otherwise they're cognizant because they're here. For you, if they identify everything outside of addiction
Mm-hmm.
as a part of their goals in therapy, how do you then navigate that conversation with them as a clinician?
Because you start from where they are. So you work with, it's not my job to write their treatment plan and put addiction in it.
Mm-hmm.
If they believe that that's not an issue that they need to address now, it doesn't get addressed. You could, as we talk about what are the goals you want to address while you're here in treatment, we look at maybe, we can look at, okay, you've had two DUIs. What does that mean for you? How do you understand what the DUIs are? Because I don't go through 12 steps with clients. We talk about it because that's a process that they go outside. If they bring and talk about how it is, we talk about what that feels like and what was it like to be in those meetings for them. But in talking about the DUI, we talk about how did that happen, what was the process, what did you learn from it. Let's talk about, you've had two or three. How's the third one different from the second one? How is the second one different from the first? What did you learn? How do you understand that's impairing your life? We talk about that. I don't actually, I don't even use the addiction. I don't even use like an addict, an addiction. I don't. I talk about somebody who's using substances, and based on what they're using, I would say somebody using cocaine, somebody using heroin, so that we make it not the elephant in the room. You actually name what it is and talk about how they see that. But if they don't want to talk about their disease of using, we don't. I don't bring that up unless in terms of talking about how they are dealing with an issue in their life. If that's an example, we say, well, you've talked about you've been incarcerated because how do you understand that? What happened that happened? It's always questioning rather than this is what it is. Because the more you tell them what it is, the more you separate from what the client real goal of being in treatment for him or her. Because the treatment is for him, for her, not me.
Right. And the one thing that I want to encourage people to do is to get help, because it
Yeah.
is easy for us to say that, treatment cannot be beneficial for me. It's easy for us to cop out, use the easy cop outs and say, okay, oh yeah, that doesn't look like it'll be good to me or for my family member, because those people may be judgmental, blah, blah, blah. But understand this: when we're asking questions, when you come in for an initial behavioral assessment or biopsychosocial assessment, whichever one the clinician that you're seeing uses, we're doing a comprehensive history taking. So we're taking a complete, not only medical, but biological, psychosocial, history taking, because we want to know how your life has looked over the course of its becoming. We want to know whether or not you were born with any health issues or birth defects, if pregnancy was difficult for your mother. We want to know whether or not you had any significant big T's or big traumas in your life. We want to know whether or not you've had any bullying history or difficulty making friends, or we want to know what things you've used in the past to deal with your issues when you found yourself in conflict or ambivalent about life in general. We want to know what your self injury history looked like. We want to know whether or not you've been homicidal towards people. We want to know what every component of life and every functional domain that you have ever stepped in looks like, so that we can best assess what's really going on with you. And we can bring things full circle in a conversation. For me, I don't dance around any issue.
Mm-hmm.
So if you've identified something that doesn't come up with the what I want for therapy, right? I'm gonna bring up the fact that, okay, well, you mentioned here that this was an
Mm-hmm.
issue. Do you feel like that's something, excuse me, that could be contributing to this issue that you said that you want to resolve as a part of your goals? Because it could be, based on my clinical conceptualization. It's my job to make sure that you guys understand the clinical component, how it all ties in. So I'm a person that will explain the link, whether you want to address them gradually,
Mm-hmm.
not at all,
Mm-hmm.
it's on you.
Yeah, and that's, it's like what I said.
Right.
You don't want to talk about the substance abuse, but we're talking about something, and I know it ties into you had the 3 DUI. Well, I
Right.
know that's an issue for you, so I'm gonna mention the 3 DUI. Let's try to make some connection. If you choose that that's not where you want to go, we can always tailor it. There's always a next session,
Yeah.
and we can talk about what was that like for you last week when I brought up something that you weren't ready to talk about yet.
Yep.
That's how you bridge the gaps.
Mm-hmm.
And then you, as a clinician, makes the connection. Well, did you see the connection between how you live in a relationship with a man and your relationship with using heroin? You
Yep.
connect. You can make those connections. And it's a softer way to get people to get through the gate so that they can really talk about that using, because it might be a little bit too painful for them to be handling that right now. Because your clients come in with kind of their own agenda, and that's why we take a psychosocial, because we want to get the whole story. So,
They
and
have
the
their own
important thing
thing.
about it is to go through that story with them on their next meeting. All the things we talked about last week, that 2 hours we spent with your assessment,
This is
let's
our
go
clinical
through
understanding.
that.
This is the summary.
Yeah.
This is what I see is going on here. And here are some helpful ways that we
Mhm.
found historically have been, really, efficient in helping to alleviate some of the issues you present with.
Yeah.
So, does any of that resonate with you?
Right.
Do you want to know more about any of that? Right. So I think that we have to be people who help bridge the gap. But I think that we, as people who identify as Black and brown people, have got to also be very honest and say, okay, some things in life, there are racist people. Okay. People are going to be racist, or should I say, people are going to be discriminatory at every walk of life that you enter.
Mhm.
I'm going to tell you something that your grandma should have told you. Okay. People are going to discriminate against you because you wear weave. People are going to discriminate against you because you wear white. They're going to discriminate against you because you have big boobs. They're going to discriminate against you because you have a small penis. They're
Because you
going
have an accent that sounds different today.
right. Everything, anything that you can think of. under the sun. Your walk, your weight, your talk, your teeth, your eyes, all of that. I got people telling me, I mean, oh my God, your teeth are not real. You had to have braces at some point. No. My teeth are very real. They're very natural. I've never had braces. This is the way they were. I wasn't born with them. They grew in and then they fell out and then they grew in again and this is what the fuck you get. Okay? So I'm gonna say that. So and to be honest with you, I remember when I went through my identity crisis between ages for me 13 to 14. I didn't care about brushing my teeth and felt like I had ginormous teeth and they were just annoying to me. Okay, so there you go. Little known fact. Run with it. Okay. So
But you know, this thing about addiction, right, is that people ignore it because they don't understand the real
underlying issue.
implication of what it means when people are using.
Yeah.
Or maybe some do, and they just don't know how to handle that. They don't know how to interpret that, how to understand that. Because we throw around a lot of jargons, but what do you really know what those jargons are? What's the implication of those jargons, right?
Right.
And then there are those who have tried, try to smoke something and they were like, I don't want it. And then you just don't use it, but your friend continued. Right?
Yeah. And I think, here's the thing, because like treating people who have, so I say treating people and successfully treating people. So those are two different things. I've had a successful treatment efficacy of substance use of folks clinically, and I have about a 96% how do they say full recovery rate, right?
Not change things too.
So not necessarily stepping back, going back on those endorsement of staying clean, and going back out here in these streets or whatever. And I don't judge the ones who have redacted that claim and gone back and use substances again, because I don't believe in asking people for more than what they can give me. I believe in teaching people to be people of their word. And if you know that there is a possibility that you might end back up in this situation because your circumstances are far too difficult for you to really gauge what life may look like in the future, even at the end of treatment with me, I want you to be honest and tell yourself that. That way I know to check on you more frequently. I know to do what it is to create space in my calendar for you to come back if you need to return. And so for me, it's all about the outcomes. And I need people to understand that we all slip up. Life is not about having one straight line. It's about having several wiggly lines and sometimes some straight ones, but sometimes we've got to navigate going over here to the, east and over here to the west for a bit before we get to where we need to go. Okay. So I think that we have to be people who are permissive with ourselves and give ourselves space to be authentically. And what that looks like, it's just be honest. We're going through a difficult moment. We recognize that when we went through a difficult moment, we too were faced with using substances like a person that we see. And that's like looking in the mirror for us. But it makes it hard to have that conversation because the folks that I've talked to that have not gone back, that's what they tell me. When they see people struggling through that same cycle that they found themselves in years ago, ages ago sometimes, they're afraid to have the conversation. Because they know that when they were there, they were so far gone that they would fire off on anybody that would that thought they could intervene.
Yeah, it's really about trying to surround yourself with people who supports you. People who are able to real simple stuff, not just say how you doing. Because when somebody asks you how you doing, what's your answer? I'm fine. Yep. But do you know what kind of mood this person was in? No, you don't.
What does that
Nobody's
look
ever
like?
gonna say I'm. You know, when you say how you doing, like I'm doing shitty blah. Nobody never does. I'm fine, and then you
Except
have
me.
no understanding of
Look,
what's going
except me. So nobody ever asked me how I'm doing because I'm gonna tell you the truth. Like I'm stressed the out.
on. So you gotta support. You gotta tell people they matter. You gotta ask and look people in the eye. You
Mm-hmm.
gotta check in with people. You gotta say, "Let me take you on. Let me do something." If we start to practice showing respect for each other and that people matter, that maybe folks will be able to come and say, "Look, I had a really rough night last night because while I was sitting alone, these thoughts came to my head."
Right. And
You know,
then also control the shock factor because here's the reality. And I'm not telling you guys to not feel. I want you to relate. Okay. Not so don't negate feeling. I want you to try and relate. Okay. Just relate. That's it. So when a person tells you, like I said to myself last night after having such a difficult day, and my husband just wouldn't do anything that aligned with me and he didn't come and he didn't rub my feet, or he just doesn't make me feel the way he used to make me feel. And I just thought to myself, like, I literally have nothing else to live for because he's all that I have. I want you to relate. I want you to tap into a moment in your life where you felt like you had only one thing that mattered to you the most in the world. Because we all have that moment in our life. It's just sometimes harder for some of us to own it.
Mhm.
We have one moment in our life where there was only one thing that kept us anchored to this earth. And I want you to focus on that. And I want you to put yourself in that person's shoes. And I want you to, for once, say, oh man, what if I felt like that didn't, you know what I mean? That really wasn't my purpose, or I wasn't living
Mhm.
up to the standards of that purpose. That one
Mhm.
thing that I felt like I just meant the most. Sometimes you've got to put yourself in another person's shoes
Mhm.
to remove the wow factor, right? And to put in the empathy factor. Because empathy comes from true understanding, just understanding, listening, giving yourself space to create space for that person permissively. That's all about them.
Allow people to step in that comfort zone and they actually wouldn't take it over. They'll stand with you.
Exactly.
And you'll be right. That's really all it takes. And the guilt and the shame that you have deep inside, it's okay to admit them.
Yeah.
That's what that those are biggies. The guilt that people feel because you often feel as a kid, I was responsible. And you
Mm-hmm.
walk around with that 40 years later, and every situation that happened that kind of sort of didn't feel good, I was responsible.
Yeah, I see it now. People believe that folks need to be responsible for all sorts of things, and I don't know. Nobody else needs to be responsible for anybody else's feelings. You need
No.
to be accountable for your own. At the end of the day, we all struggle through things in life, and sometimes we normalize the things that aren't necessarily conducive to our overall gain, but
Mhm.
it is conducive to the immediate removal of the pain. Okay. And so I think that that's what's a detriment to us. I think that we look to not feel too often,
Mhm.
and we
Mhm.
don't look to feel enough. And so we have to sometimes embrace feelings, whatever those feelings are, as
Mhm.
painful as they may be, because here's the thing, if you feel something, it's a reminder that you are alive, even if it's pain. It's a reminder that you're anchored to life, and
Mhm.
your anchoredness to life means that you have a purpose in this life for somebody and something greater than you. So you need to expand your capacity to feel, invite and expand your permissiveness for life, because there is someone who is going through a much more difficult time than you at any point that you have hit rock bottom. And you have to remind yourself that. And that's not to take away from your moment. Remind yourself of that so that you can pick yourself up off the ground, even if
Mhm.
you find that you got to drag yourself. Okay. Because we've all been there. Like I've had to literally learn how to walk again
Mhm.
twice in my life. And it was rough. Okay, I'm not gonna tell you that I didn't wake up feeling to myself like, God, I just wish I could have just died on that table. Why they bring me back? Why didn't I sign a DNR? Because it was hard. And that's what we do when things get hard. When things get hard, we want to quit.
We want to feel good all the time, and it's okay to sit with the uncomfortableness.
Yeah. And
That's
you
what
have
people
to
do. That's how people stay clean and sober. They sit with the uncomfortableness until it feels comfortable and it no longer becomes a burden. That's how people change.
exactly.
It's no
Invite
longer a
the
burden.
discomfort, embrace the discomfort, hug it, become best friends with it.
You
Sisters,
know,
if you will.
I run, right?
Uh-huh.
So sometimes it's just struggle to get up. And one of the things I say to myself, I'll make friends with my weakness and then I'll beat the heck out of him. So you know what that means? I run an extra mile today, which I didn't think yesterday I could, but I did today because part of what I say to me is I make friends with that,
Yeah.
whatever that is, and
Yeah.
then beat the crap out of it.
Yeah.
And then I just do it. I went
Yeah.
and
You
do it.
just gotta do it.
You
You
have a
just
purpose, right?
yeah, be intentional.
We've got to have a purpose.
So
Mhm.
whether you guys know somebody who is currently struggling through, addictive disease, using substances, whether they want to say it's for medicinal purposes or for, coping purposes or whatever, we're all going through a very difficult time. And that's not to take away from your crisis
Mhm.
and your very difficult struggle, but understand that if you know somebody who's going through something, be there for them, provide space for them to become more congruent with their outcomes. And below in our ticker is the contact number for the National Crisis Center. And there is always a live person available to take your call, regardless of the time of day, the holiday status, what day it is, whatever. Pick up the phone, make the call. It doesn't make you the bad guy. It makes you the person who is overcoming
Mhm.
the obstacles that you think are there in front of you,
Mhm.
that you feel have been put in front of you. It's helping you to overcome the stigma. Because when we tell ourselves that Black people don't have resources, I think that that's one thing that we tell ourselves in order for us to remove the accountability component to getting help, to stabilizing ourselves, to doing better, to knowing better. So, any other thoughts that you have before we wrap up, Susanna?
Well, I just think it's okay for people to feel whatever feelings you have. It doesn't always have to be feeling good all the time. That's what a lot of, addiction and other kind of even depression and anxiety, all about. It's that people want to feel better. And the more that they try to feel better, they get anxious, they get depressed, or they start to use some substance because what they're feeling is not enough. Feel what you feel. Sit with it. If it's uncomfortable enough, call somebody. Reach out to somebody. Make somebody important in your life besides you. You recover when there are people outside of you who matters to you. So that they become, like life. I look at life like links in a chain. They don't seem important by themselves, but when you put the links together, you've got this beautiful necklace, right? But you got to put it together because you're a community. People is important to people. Your feelings are important. Acknowledge people's feelings. Tell them they're okay. Tell yourself you're okay. Get up in the morning. Look yourself in the mirror and say good morning, whatever your name is. And don't kind of look sideways. Look at yourself. Say good morning. Start somewhere. Next week you'll add some more to good morning. But it's a start because you matter. People, you matter to somebody. Reach out and figure out who that is. Reach out to them and tell them good morning. Make
I agree.
your day.
Even if it's a stranger.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There's a reason why that, we have this thing. A lot of us who are therapists and clinicians, when we get on the bus, how people come and sit down and just give us, or when you wait and they give you their whole life story,
Yes.
that's not an accident.
Yeah. It's because they're drawn to you. We many people who are clinicians, they tend to be beacons. And the one thing that I want to add to the fact that that all of this has an underlying root in emotional incongruence and instability in us is the fact that oftentimes we don't look at how much Christianity and religion and faith had to do with the stability of our ancestors when they went through the things that we want to identify with today. And the thing is, they were anchored to their faith. And sometimes it's hard for us to find those, resiliency factors, but we have to search really, really deep within us to find those spiritual components to keep us tethered to life, and to our true purpose and passion for life. So if you're a person who is struggling because you see all of the incongruences and things just don't make sense to you, reach out, get yourself a clinician, get yourself the help that you need. Be permissive with yourself, be intentional with your energy. Okay. And most of all, and above all, like Susanna said, find somebody to anchor your intentions towards, because that one somebody can make a huge difference. It could be a world of difference in your outcome. So that is all that I have. I am Dr. Lakiana Jefferson. I thank you guys for sitting with us and listening to this discussion, because I know it's very difficult, because it's not something that we talk about on a regular basis in the Black community. I know that you guys would much rather be looking at celebrity gossip, because you guys pull up
Stay away from that stuff.
Right, you pull up for the negative energy. You don't want the good stuff. You're here for the negative energy though. But hey, I ain't judging nobody, but I am though. That's all I got, you guys. Take care. Absolutely love you guys. I'm gonna go ahead and play the show outro. I hope you guys live free, be of value to somebody who is close to you, and even those folks who are distant from you. Try to be a positive impact on those people. And if you know somebody who is finding themselves in a constant state of overwhelming emotions, or constantly lost, or going through substance use or substance abuse issues, then put your hand out and your energy out and your heart out their way to give them positive vibes so that they can stay their course and eventually they can recover.
I know you matter, no matter what.
Exactly. All right. Later days. Bye.
Who alive can't put me in a box. I redefine any definition you got. I am the tiger, I'm making steps to the top. The flames, I whip it up, you just gotta hand me the rock. Take a seat, you cannot stand it. All I know, the flow harder than a Scotch bunny. Don't try studying me, you cannot manage. This ain't what you want, bitch, I'm a fucking phenomenon. This ain't what you want, bitch, I'm a fucking phenomenon.